Welcome back, awkward insurance people. We are in the season of thanks, so I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing your light into our industry, and I see you. I thank you for being you. Let's celebrate the blessings that we've received and the cherished moments that we've shared, and I am so thankful for the space to be able to talk about whatever is on our big insurance minds, and that we are on this awkward journey together. Our previous episode was with Mike Colselny. He joined us to talk about his history with and his perspective on the insurance industry layoffs. And he shared so much from his perspective to help us gain understanding of the warning signs of a layoff and what you can do to maybe, layoff prep if you're a prepper. But he said the word recruiter so many times we could have made a drinking game out of it. And I am so excited for the guest that we have here today, because in a world where job security can sometimes seem a bit of a unicorn, we've got the beacon of light with us today. We have Jacob Galecki, an insurance and insurtech recruiter and the founder of Galecki Search Associates with us today. Jacob, how are you?
I am well. And one brief comment on Beacon of Light. That was a song that my band in middle school played that was composed by my middle school band teacher.
Oh my gosh.
David Ryan. Shout out to David Ryan. I think I might remember the melody, but it'll have to come to me. So maybe you could cue me later.
Well, stay tuned for that later. So we first met at InsurTech Insights in New York in 2023. Heard you had a connection to a wonderful lady, Noelle Codispati, and we had such a wonderful time together. Listeners should go back and check out your piece on day one episode of InsurTech Insights. But I think right now, I'm glad we haven't had an episode just you and I together before now, because I think right now is a really good time to have some of the conversations that I'm hopeful we're going to have today. And like I said, our last episode, we kind of focused on the warning signs of what a layoff would be and Mike's experience having been through a layoff himself and kind of how to prep. And then he started talking about building a network, which we're all into networking, most of us these days. If you're not, I don't know what you're doing, but building a network. And he just kind of hounded on ensuring that you have recruiters in your network. And I'm not going to lie, I get inboxed and emailed by recruiters, but their messages all feel kind of spammy. So I'm hoping you can change my perspective that recruiters are spammers.
A lot of them are.
So we're not changing perspectives for the most part
Well,
today.
there are different models, and I'm happy to share, a little peek behind the curtain as to how recruiters work. That might be helpful.
Yeah.
But I am not a spammer, So, on LinkedIn, we have the LinkedIn recruiter, right? And so we're given a certain amount of messages. I think it's my firm, we have 3 seats and we get 400 messages per month. We are always at 1,197 left. So that means we have used 3 messages. Call that a spammer. I dare you. So we reach out to only those individuals that are very, very well qualified for the positions that we're reaching out. So I want people to be, trained like Pavlov's dogs. If they hear from Jacob Galecki or my colleague, Anna Kupik, that they're being reached out about a quality position that they are qualified for.
So give us a day in the life of Jacob Galecki in terms of what recruiting looks like for you. I think it does need to spend a little bit of time just kind of, if you're going to build a network of recruiters, what should you look for? Or do you just...
Well, there's a lot of, there's like 4 questions in there, right? So let's start with a day in the life of Jacob Galecki.
I do that a lot. I send out a lot of questions and expect you to answer them all.
So we're doing a couple of things, right? I need client, I have to deliver on the jobs I'm recruiting for right now, right? With my clients. I have to also go find more work to recruit for, right? So there's that. And then that's the job side of the job, if you will. And then there's the candidate side. So I'm also finding candidates for the jobs that I'm recruiting for right now. And I'm also finding candidates that I will need in the future for, and we'll put a pin in this part, but for jobs I'll need in the future. And this is where kind of the intersection of what I'm doing and what people are preparing for layoffs are doing that's helpful. So every recruiter So, and this is the answer to the second part of your question. Every recruiter has their specialty, and that could be the function that they recruit for. So, some people just recruit, let's say, finance, and so they're only going to be doing, and then they might actually be even nichier than that. They might be, I only do FP&A. I don't do controllers. And perhaps I should give an insurance example. So for us, like we really focus on actuarial, underwriting, product, and that's it. And we do a few other things, sure, but the things that we really focus on are those things. And so those are the types of people that need to be reaching out to us to establish a long-term relationship. And again, we'll put a pin in that too, and talk about that in a minute. And then there is the level too. So recruiters also focus on level. There are recruiters that will focus exclusively on front line. So let's say like they do adjusters all day, every day. They do desk underwriters all day, every day. Me and my firm, we focus on more senior level positions like managers, directors, and up. And so up to executive levels. And so we're not so focused on those early career professionals. We are kind of middle and senior professionals within their career. So, but these are the questions you need to be asking recruiters. What do you specialize in? What areas specifically do you recruit in? Which levels do you typically work in? But, and I think like for me, right, actuarial, product underwriting, if someone's junior, eventually they'll be senior. So it's never too early to establish a relationship and start having that conversation, right? And I think that these are things that really need to be considered when aligning yourself to a recruiter. And it doesn't have to be an exclusive relationship either. So there could be a couple of different things or a couple of different people that you could foster a relationship with.
Where do you go to find a recruiter? Do you just hashtag recruiter and go pick one out? I mean,
Well,
it feels a lot like dating.
it is. There are a lot in like any profession. There are some that are better than others, right?
Right.
And so it's up to you. It's like we're insurance people. We know how to evaluate risk. We know how to like uncover the facts. So talk to the people, uncover the facts. Also, like I don't think, and this can't be overestimated or over iterated, whichever. We're allowed to be awkward, so we can use the wrong words.
We make up our
yeah,
own words on awkward.
yeah, yeah. So you need to like the person. Is this somebody that you want to have a relationship with and like talk to regularly throughout your career? Or do they like, is it like
Right.
fingernails on a chalkboard for you?
And then you have to go through the awkward breakup.
Yeah.
Like this is sounding
Well,
traumatizing, to be honest.
it's not,
with
it doesn't
you.
have to be traumatizing. So you're going to get contacted by recruiters, right? And so that's like your first clue. Maybe this person recruits the stuff that I do. So like I'll have a conversation and then you can underwrite them, right? Say like, do I like this person? Does this person recruit in my space? Or did they just end up with a job? A lot of recruiters will just end up with a random insurance job, right? They're not in insurance all day, every day, right? I'm in insurance all day, every day. I'm talking to insurance people all day, every day. When someone stops talking about insurance or doesn't know anything about insurance, I back awkwardly out of the room.
So you look for insurance people, which means that you've got insurance on both sides. You've got your candidates and you've got your employers, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about maybe your perspective on what the current state of the insurance career market is. With Mike, we talked kind of what his perspective was. Wow, this is kind of business as usual. It's not new that the industry has laid people off before. It's not even, specific to our own industry. We're going through an economic situation is what I'll refer to it as. What's your perspective on the job market in the insurance industry from the recruiter's perspective?
Well, it's both bad and it's good. It's weird, and actually for the last year, when someone says, "How is the market?" I have responded, "Weird." Insurance is
It's awkward.
It's awkward. Yeah, but yeah, it's been weird. So, it's like on one side there are layoffs happening, but then there's hiring going on.
Right.
And so it's like almost like a reshuffling. But insurance is a big place, right? When we say insurance, what are we talking about? It's the reinsurance ecosystem. It's the whole distribution world, right? There's both personal lines carriers, commercial specialty carriers. There's admitted, there's non-admitted. There's just like this huge world. And then like what I think is really great from like an employment perspective is that this is a big market and it's usually not evenly impacted by whatever economic concerns are going on right now. Unfortunately, right now, Personal lines is taking its lumps, right?
Yeah, I hate it.
We have inflation. We have capacity issues on the property side. We have inflation on the auto side. It's not doing so hot. Will it rebound? Absolutely. On the other hand, commercial's doing really, really well. Record profits. Like I just saw Chubb, it's like up, whatever. Everyone's like 23% up from last year. 22, 21, 23%. Everyone's just raking it in on the commercial side. So can your skills be repurposed if you're a personal lines person that just got laid off for the commercial side? Probably. Is there an opportunity for you on the commercial line side? Probably. Take a look.
Reskill, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's nuanced. I think there's some things that if you're a personal property adjuster, that might be tough to translate over to commercial. But maybe you have to take a few certifications and maybe you can learn it. But right after I use that as an example, I'm thinking to myself, it's like, well, hurricanes don't care; they're still going to happen, and you're still going to need adjusters to adjust the losses, right? So maybe that's not a great example.
Oh my gosh. So you had a pretty interesting perspective when you called me earlier today and was like, what are we even talking about today? About the bygone years of being with a company for decades,
Yeah.
right? I don't know, we don't have to hash out like age range here, but I feel like we're pretty similar in age range. And we grew up with parents that have been at their employers for decades.
Yeah. My dad,
And now
40
it's
years.
more often, right? So, and I think more often than not now, I don't know what generation it started with, maybe X or maybe millennial. We tend to, move from one employer to another, typically staying within our career. Sometimes there are career jumpers. So, I mean, what's your perspective on that?
We see layoffs, right? And I think I think people have been trained over the last 20, 30 years to look over their shoulder and say like, hey,
What do you mean by look over your shoulder?
well, it's like, I'm going to be loyal to my employer. I'm going to do a good job. I'm going to show up every day, right? And work hard. It's like, but, there's this like potential to be laid off in a business decision, right? And I think companies
Sure.
were less likely to do it. And I don't have data to back this up, by the way. So sorry, actuaries out there. But I don't have data to back this up.
And you recruit
Yeah.
actuaries predominantly, and here you are not fronting the data.
Yeah. Well, and I'd be curious to see the data on it, but I wonder like the frequency and the severity, you're welcome, actuaries, of the layoffs. I wonder if they're increasing over time. And that's making people want to move around. But, we're also coming outside of the COVID era, right? And so there was just this intense talent grab during COVID. And it was just nuts. It was a wild ride, and people were moving all over the place, and there was a ton of turnover. They talk about the great resignation. People weren't quitting just to like sit on their couch and eat bonbons. They were moving to another job.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of people moving 2, even 3 jobs during the COVID era because companies kept calling them and saying, hey, we'll give you a 20% increase. We'll give you a 30% increase. And it got pretty nuts. And frankly, it incentivized a lot of bad behavior. You won't believe how many times I heard candidates tell me, I don't want to take this job. I don't have a particular affinity toward this company, but they're paying me more. So I'm just going to go.
Oh gosh.
Right? It's nuts.
Break that down a little bit, because to me that doesn't make sense. In a time of COVID where things were kind of uncertain, what do you think was driving that there was such a grab for people when for the most part it was like, oh my gosh, is this it? Are we going to be laid off?
Well, we had a very brief recession, right? We had a very brief recession in 2022 right after COVID hit, and then we figured things out, and then from there we were off to the races, man. From like Q3 in 2020 all through 2021, we were busy, very, very busy, and it was nuts. And so why? I don't know, but companies were hiring.
I kind of lean towards maybe now it became such an open market. Like we're no longer just needing to recruit locally, and companies had to look, for that. Everybody needed to be remote for a time.
Yeah.
And so it was like, well, as long as we're remote, why do we have to stay local to somebody who's remote? We can go elsewhere.
And now we're seeing the corollary to that, and it is companies are hiring in their location. We're seeing what the model that most companies have kind of settled into at this point is hybrid. They want somebody locally, but they don't have to be in the office every day. We got a call from a company a couple weeks ago, and this is the first one we've seen in the post COVID era. And this is not to say that this is common or uncommon, but this is the first we've seen 5 days in office.
Hmm.
We said, I don't think we can do this.
Like you turned it down as a recruiter. You didn't think you were going to find people
No,
that would be willing to do 5 days in office.
no, I don't think they're out there.
I agree. I think it kind of shocks me even still. I don't even know where my brain is at that oh gosh, when it comes to being able, if you've got the positions that can work that are predominantly computer based,
hmm
I don't understand why shortchange yourself to only your local
Yeah.
market, even with the hybrid option. I mean, there still needs to be some flexibility there, I think. And I think a lot of companies came out better for being able to find the talent that they needed that weren't in their local market.
I think it's going to create a competitive edge for those companies that can recruit remotely. They can get anybody they want.
Okay, so you kind of gain perspective from what the employer side of that is, that they're looking for maybe some hybrid options now. What do you see from your, what do you call them again? I've already lost the name.
Candidates?
They're not the employer, candidate. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
That's why I'm really shocked. Like, I don't remember twofold questions. And earlier you were like, that's a multi-part question. So part one, part two. And I'm like, I don't even remember what
I know.
part
And I
two
still
was
owe
at
you the
this
melody,
point.
the beacon of light. So, here we are.
So what do you see from your candidates though? Are they, when they come to you, is there any kind of level set where you're like, okay, your expectations is a little unrealistic, we need to rein you in a little bit? Or
So far, they're still in the driver's seat. And it's, as recruiters refer to it as a company driven market or a candidate driven market. We're still very much in a candidate driven market. We're starting to see some of that kind of be reeled in, and where companies have a little bit more say in the process, but there's still plenty of companies hiring remotely, plenty of companies offering competitive salaries, at least in the areas that I recruit in, right? So understand that like there's slightly different economics involved. There are, at last count, 10,195 credentialed property and casualty actuaries in worldwide. And you know what? That's about how many we're going to have. There's going to be probably about 500 more added to that by the end of the year, but that's still, in the broad scheme of things, not a lot of people. And so we're working with a finite pool of talent. So if the market needs, I don't know, 11,000 actuaries, you can't just like wave a magic wand and create them. And so there's only so many, and you have to wait for more to be, quote unquote, manufactured, right? As they get through their exam process, and that takes them like 8 years. So,
yeah,
if a company said, hey, let's recruit people who have a lot of potential and train them to be an actuary, you're not going to have a fully fledged actuary for a decade,
gosh,
right? And so you're really at the mercy of the supply. And during the time that I've recruited actuaries, which has been now 13 years, I have never seen the demand dip below the supply. And so then on the underwriting side, we're doing senior underwriters. These are people who have both deep product knowledge and also deep relationships with distribution partners. You can't create that overnight either.
no, not really.
Yeah, so the types of people, and so this is where I think people need to understand too about recruiters, is that we operate from a place of scarcity, right? And so we are helping companies grapple with scarcity in the marketplace. So there's a scarcity of talent for what they're looking for. And that's the problem that we solve, is help them, because essentially if you want somebody in our space, you have to get them from somewhere else, right? You have to get them to move.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of poaching
Yeah.
when it comes to the insurance industry for sure.
Every time someone says poaching, I say we call it recruiting.
Tomato, tomato, being tomato. So when it comes to the layoffs, and I know you kind of stay upper management, directorship, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, and you're very specific to the financial planning and analysis and the underwriting and actuaries. What steps? I don't know. We heard from Mike. He had some tips in terms of what should I do to, I don't know, prep for a
Yeah.
layoff if I felt like it was coming or if something's going to happen. And his tips were essentially, grow a network, one that's actually, got some gumption to it, not just a whole bunch of people that you don't know. kind of thing. Stay involved with your company and your organization. That's, one way to kind of show that you're valuable to the organization if you're highly involved with that. And so that maybe you'll have less of a chance to be laid off, or, if it comes down to somebody actually reviewing the names
Mhm.
and who gets cut and who doesn't, kind of thing. All that kind of stuff. What would you add to the tips here? What should job seekers do to stand out in a competitive market, or whether they're entry level or seasoned professionals? Like, what's Jacob's advice for prepping?
Yeah. Well, first, a couple of platitudes. One, a ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure, right?
Oh my
And
god, I totally said that last episode.
it's a great platitude. Here's another: luck favors the prepared. And so
Luck favors the prepared.
I will add some commentary to the advice that was given. So network, yes, always be networking, meeting new people. And then, but the thing is like, yeah, meet a person. That's one thing, but you need to like forge a relationship with that individual. Go to coffee. When you're at a conference, reach out to them and meet up with them. Have a snack together during a break at a conference, or build that relationship. So it's not just knowing somebody; they have to actually be somewhat invested in the relationship, right? And they'll stick their neck out for you. Being involved in your company, yes. And actually, I would argue that that's just an extension of networking. That's like, that's internal networking. Also very important, if not more important than external networking. Because there you actually have advocates that are up the chain to you, the decision makers that will stick their neck out for you when the layoffs come internally. And three, the resume, keeping that up to date, I think that is the best piece of advice. I always recommend that people use their resume as a living document, and everything that they do, every accomplishment that they have, they document it in the resume. And you might end up with like a 10-page resume, right? Do not send that to anyone. But what
Yeah, I was just gonna say, since when did 10-page resumes become the standard?
well, here's the magic. Here's the magic is that when you have to go send your resume somewhere and the company says, we value this, we value that, we need this, we need that, we need people who are scrappy, you can pluck out really good examples from your catalog of accomplishments and cater it. So people always like, cater your resume. And like people are like, well, how do I do that? And it's like, this is how you do that.
I am adding scrappy to
That's
my
become such a buzzword in hiring. It's like everybody wants somebody who's scrappy. And so
What is scrappy in
I,
terms of a job meaning?
I it's like, hey, we don't have any.
Define that.
I think what it means is doing what it takes to get the job done when you have limited resources. Welcome to the world in 2023. But, you need to be fostering relationships with recruiters. And so, a lot of layoffs have been happening, and I've been getting contacted by a lot of people who have been affected by these layoffs, right? But what people need to understand is that I am at the mercy of the same market that they're at the mercy of. I am not a magician. I am working on a finite amount of jobs with my finite amount of clients, right? And they need what they need. And I also have a finite amount of relationships in the marketplace. And they're also either hiring or they're not. And so at any point in time, there might actually be very little that can be done for any particular person, right? It's almost like the law of large numbers, to talk in the insurance parlance. And so it's like if I have 1,000 candidates, I can probably help a percentage of them find a job right now. But here's the secret with working with a recruiter is have that relationship, find someone you like, someone you trust, someone who works and somebody who actually knows what you're doing and understands what it is that you do as a professional, right? So those are the table stakes. Go beyond that, you also really need to understand where you're going in your career, what's next, and what's after that, and what's after that. And you might not be able to you know, you could see into the future, but you might not be able to see like very far into the future, right? But you should have a general sense for what you want to get out of your career and where you want to go,
Hmm.
what you want to do next. And a recruiter can really help you kind of shape that picture for you because sometimes people can create visions that are slightly unrealistic. But to have a realistic vision of your future career, I think is super helpful. And then communicate that to your recruiting partners. And then they become a job scout for you.
So we've learned how to work with a recruiter, kind of what a recruiter is, what they do. What is a recruiter not?
Well, a lot of things, we're talking. I say this to companies is that we're not magicians. We find people that exist. We don't create people out of thin air. And I think that's similarly, the corollary to that with candidates is we find jobs that exist. We can't create them. That's not within our power to create situations that are non-existent. What else are we not? I don't know. So yeah, so we're finding people for jobs. That's what we are.
Yeah.
Not magicians.
Anything that people should watch out for whenever they're working with a recruiter?
Yeah, I think there's no barrier to entry, right? So like anybody that in your life can wake up one morning and say, you know what? I'm a recruiter. And
Mm.
and so I think that there are a lot of people who kind of don't know what they're doing out there. There's no barrier to entry. So I would recommend that you look for recruiters that have done this for a long time and also have served an industry for a long time. And so if people have been careless, perhaps with one industry, they might have been kind of pushed out of that industry into another, recruiting something else. So I think look for people who have dedicated themselves to a particular area of recruitment. And I think that, pretty much if they're still around after 10 years and they've been doing it, they know what they're doing. So what to look out for are those who are perhaps new to the recruiting industry. Sorry, new recruiters, but there is like so many I won't implicate, but there are a lot of firms out there that the parlance in the recruitment industry is called grad shop. So their model is to essentially it's almost like one step removed from multi tiered marketing, right? Like Amway. And so they are going to pull people right out of college who don't have a lot of prospects, hire them, give them a phone, and say, blow up the world. That's where that's where the spammy thing comes from. And so and
Yeah.
literally they have to call like 500 people a day. Can you imagine?
Oh, it's so annoying.
Can you imagine having to make 500 phone calls in one day? I'm not
No.
even certain I've done that this year. So it's like, quality over quantity, people. And so they do that at scale. So they hire like 30 people and they're all like doing 500 calls a day. Yeah, a blind squirrel can find a nut, right? We like in any given job, we're going to identify, 20 to 50 really good people who are well aligned to that role. We're going to reach out to them about the opportunity and either they're interested or they're not. And we don't push it any further.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of mouths to feed, right? And they have to meet their numbers. And so they're going to be ruthless, scrappy even to, get their numbers up. And I think I always say like that's our competition. It's a competition for attention. They're not competing for the business. These firms are competing for the attention that could otherwise be allocated to good, and I know a lot of great recruiters. And there's so many. There's so many really good recruiters out there. And there's a lot of bad ones. Sorry.
I have a couple of jokes or maybe puns to wrap up our session here. Are you ready?
Hmm.
Where do you find a good recruiter?
Where?
You don't. They find you. Why did the witch get hired on the spot?
Oh, I don't know.
Because she swept them off their feet.
Oh, God. That one.
Okay, last one. What did the applicant say when asked why he expects such a high salary with no experience? That happened to you a lot?
Yes. I don't know. Tell me.
Well, the job is much harder when you don't know what you're doing.
That
Okay.
sounds about right. Don't get me started on that one.
I kind of agree with that one a little bit.
Hey, you know what? There's a certain logic to it for sure.
Oh my gosh, Jacob, not Jake. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I didn't get to ask you, what are you most thankful for in this season of things?
You know what? I am just such a very happy father. And I am so thankful for my wonderful daughter who makes me laugh every day, even when it's not funny and she gets mad at me for laughing.
That's such definitely something to be thankful for. Thanks so much for being here today. I have had an eye-opening experience, and I'm going to learn how to be scrappy. Toodles, everybody! Thanks for hanging out and listening to another Awkward Insurance Conversation.
If you haven't already, be sure to join the Awkward Insurance Facebook community. We have an amazing group of people on there.
And for more episodes, head over to the National Alliance website at scic.com. Now go forth and be awkward. Toodles!
That's awkward.